The forced silence, the Bulgarian prophet who disturbed power. Before we dive into one of the most disturbing cases of suppression in modern history, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button if you want to uncover more hidden truths that powerful forces don't want you to know. What you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about prophecy, power, and the lengths governments will go to silence those who see too much. The blind oracle who saw everything. In the remote mountains of Bulgaria, where the Rhodope peaks pierce the sky like ancient monuments to forgotten gods, there lived a woman whose eyes saw nothing, but whose mind witnessed everything. Baba Vanga, born Vangelia Pandiva Gustarova in 1911, will become the most feared prophet of the 20th century, not because of what she predicted, but because of who tried to silence her. Imagine losing your sight at 12 years old, swept away by a tornado so violent it lifted you from the earth itself, only to discover that in exchange for your physical vision, you have been given something far more dangerous, the ability to see through time itself. This wasn't just another story of mystical awakening. This was the birth of a weapon that would make even the most powerful men on earth tremble. Vanga's transformation wasn't gradual or gentle. After the tornado, she began experiencing visions so vivid and accurate that word spread like wildfire through the Balkan villages. But these weren't the comforting prophecies people expected from village fortune tellers. Vanga saw wars before they started, deaths before they happened, and most terrifyingly of all, she saw the secret plans of those in power before they even finalized them. By the 1940s, her reputation had grown beyond the borders of a small village of Rupite. People traveled from across Europe to seek her guidance, but among them were individuals who weren't seeking comfort or hope. They were government officials, military leaders, and intelligence operatives who had heard whispers of a blind woman who could see their most classified operations. The visitors who changed everything. Here's where the story takes a dark turn that most documentaries won't tell you. In 1942, during the height of World War II, a black car with diplomatic plates arrived in Rupite. Inside were three men in expensive suits who spoke in hushed tones to the local authorities before being escorted to Vanga's modest home. What happened during that 2-hour meeting remains classified to this day, but witness account from neighbors describe seeing the men emerge pale and visibly shaken. One elderly villager, whose testimony was recorded years later, claimed she heard one of the visitors shouting, "This is impossible. How could she know about Operation Bernhard? How could she know about the printing facilities in Sachsenhausen?" Operation Bernhard was Nazi Germany's top-secret counterfeiting operation designed to flood the British economy with fake pounds sterling. The operation was so classified that only a handful of high-ranking Nazi officials knew its details. Yet somehow, a blind Bulgarian woman living in a remote mountain village had described it with terrifying accuracy. But this wasn't an isolated incident. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, Vanga received visit after visit from government officials representing various nations. Each time, they would arrive seeking information about their enemies' plans, only to leave disturbed by how much she already knew about their own secret operations. Soviet intelligence files, partially declassified in the 1990s, revealed that Vanga had accurately predicted the location of hidden Nazi gold reserves, the movements of resistance fighters, and even the personal secrets of high-ranking party members. One file, stamped with the highest classification level, contains a chilling note. Subject possesses information that could destabilize current power structures. Recommend immediate containment protocols. The web of silence begins. By 1952, something had changed in how the authorities dealt with Vanga. Gone were the secret visits and the desperate pleas for information. Instead, a different strategy emerged, one designed not to exploit her abilities, but to contain them. The Bulgarian Communist Party, under pressure from Moscow, implemented what they call cultural protection measures. Officially, these were designed to protect Vanga from being exploited by foreign agents. In reality, they were the first steps in a sophisticated campaign control and ultimately silenced a woman who had become too dangerous to ignore. Lyudmila Zhivkova, daughter of Bulgarian leader Tatar Zhivkov, became Vanga's official handler. Zhivkova was intelligent, well-educated, and completely loyal to the party line. Her job was to monitor every conversation Vanga had with visitors, recording everything and reporting back to a special committee that included KGB representatives. The transcripts from these sessions, discovered after the fall of communism, reveal a disturbing pattern. Whenever Vanga made predictions that could embarrass or endanger government officials, those portions of her sessions were edited out of official records. More alarmingly, visitors who received information deemed sensitive often found themselves under surveillance or worse. One particularly chilling case involved a Western diplomat who visited Vanga in 1968. According to declassified documents, Vanga warned him that his driver was a foreign intelligence agent and that his hotel room was bugged. 2 weeks later, the diplomat died in what was officially ruled a car accident, but investigation files suggest the crash was orchestrated. The driver, coincidentally, disappeared the same day and was never found. The prophecies they didn't want you to hear. While the world knows Vanga for her predictions about natural disasters and political leaders, there's an entire category of her prophecies that remain classified for decades. These weren't just predictions about the future. They were revelations about the present that powerful people desperately wanted to keep hidden. In 1953, during a session that was supposed to be private but was secretly recorded by KGB operatives, Vanga described in detail a meeting that had taken place 3 days earlier between Stalin's inner circle. She revealed not just who was present, but what was discussed, including plans for purges that wouldn't be implemented for months. The recording, discovered in Moscow archives in 1991, includes background voices expressing shock and calling for immediate intervention. But perhaps most disturbing were her predictions about the intelligence agencies themselves. Vanga repeatedly spoke of a great eye that watches the watchers, describing surveillance networks and intelligence operations with such accuracy that several investigations were launched to find the leaks in their organizations. They never found the leaks because there weren't any. Vanga was seeing their secrets through means they couldn't understand or control. In 1962, she predicted the exact location where Gary Powers' U-2 spy plane wreckage could be found, despite the fact that both American and Soviet forces had spent months searching for it unsuccessfully. When the wreckage was eventually discovered exactly where she said it would be, both sides realized they were dealing with something beyond their comprehension. More troubling still were her insights into the personal lives of world leaders. She described private conversations between heads of state, revealed extramarital affairs that could topple governments, and exposed corruption that reached the highest levels of power. It wasn't just that she could see the future. She could see through the carefully constructed lies that held the power structure together. The systematic suppression. By the 1960s, the approach to dealing with Vanga had evolved from monitoring to active suppression. A joint operation between Bulgarian state security and Soviet intelligence created what they called the Rupipe Protocol, a comprehensive plan to limit Vanga's influence while maintaining the appearance of respecting her as a national treasure. The protocol had several components. First, all visitors had to be pre-approved by state authorities. Anyone deemed politically sensitive was turned away, or, if they insisted on visiting, found themselves under intense surveillance afterward. Second, all sessions were monitored and recorded, with sensitive material being classified immediately. Third, and most insidiously, a campaign of disinformation was launched to discredit Vanga's most politically dangerous predictions. When Vanga predicted the fall of certain Eastern European leaders months before it happened, state media would suddenly run stories questioning her mental state or suggesting she was suffering from age-related decline. When she revealed information about secret government programs, those stories would be buried under sensationalized accounts of her more fantastical predictions about aliens or distant future events. This strategy was particularly effective because it allowed them to maintain Vanga as a harmless folk curiosity while neutralizing her as a political threat. Tourism to Rupite was encouraged, but only for people seeking personal guidance about health, relationships, or minor life decisions. Anyone asking about political matters or international affairs found their sessions cut short. The most telling evidence of the suppression comes from comparison studies done after the fall of communism. Researchers found that Vanga's political predictions had an accuracy rate of over 85%, while her personal predictions for visitors hovered around 60%. Yet the official records from the communist era contain almost no political predictions at all, suggesting systematic removal of the most accurate and potentially dangerous material. The price of seeing too much. The psychological toll of the suppression on Vanga herself was severe. Friends and family members described her becoming increasingly withdrawn and paranoid, constantly looking over her shoulder despite her blindness. She began speaking in code with trusted visitors, developing an elaborate system of metaphors and symbols to communicate dangerous truths without triggering the surveillance apparatus. In one particularly heartbreaking account from her niece, Vanga confided that she often saw terrible events coming but couldn't warn people because the watchers wouldn't allow it. She spoke of feeling like a prisoner in her own gift, able to see the truth but forbidden from sharing it when it mattered most. The isolation was compounded by the fact that even her closest associates were potentially compromised. Ludmila Zivkova, her official handler, developed a genuine friendship with Vanga over the years, but their relationship was always colored by the knowledge that everything they discussed was being monitored and analyzed by intelligence operatives. Medical records from this period, discovered in Bulgarian state archives, reveal that Vanga suffered from severe depression and anxiety, conditions that were never treated because acknowledging them might suggest weakness or instability that could be exploited by her handlers. Instead, she was prescribed mild sedatives that kept her functional but compliant. Perhaps most tragically, Vanga began to self-censor, deliberately obscuring her visions or refusing to share them at all when she sensed they might cause problems. In essence, the very gift that had made her famous was being systematically destroyed by those who claimed to protect her, the international network. As the Cold War intensified, Vanga's situation became even more complex. Intelligence agencies from multiple countries were vying for access to her, each believing they could use her abilities to gain advantage over their enemies. What they discovered instead was that her gift came with a terrible price. She saw everyone's secrets, including their own. Declassified CIA documents from the 1970s reveal that American intelligence had been attempting to make contact with Vanga for years, offering her protection and relocation in exchange for exclusive access to her predictions. These overtures were consistently blocked by Bulgarian authorities, but not before Vanga had predicted several American operations with disturbing accuracy. One document, heavily redacted but still readable in parts, describes how Vanga accurately predicted the location of a secret CIA listening post in Eastern Europe 3 months before it was discovered by local authorities. Another details her knowledge of Operation Chaos, the domestic surveillance program that wouldn't be publicly revealed until the Church Committee investigations of the 1970s. The French intelligence service, DGSE, had similar experiences. Their attempt to contact Vanga through intermediaries were consistently frustrated, but not before she had accurately described several French operations in Africa, including details that were known only to a handful of operatives. One French intelligence officer, writing in his memoirs years later, described the experience as terrifying. It was as if she had been sitting in our briefing rooms. This created a bizarre situation where intelligence agencies around the world were simultaneously trying to access Vanga while working to prevent their enemies from doing the same. The result was a complex web of surveillance, counter-surveillance, and disinformation that turned the small village of Rupite into one of the most watched locations on Earth. The ultimate silencing. By the 1980s, As Vanga aged and her health declined, the authorities face a new problem. What would happen to all the classified information in her head when she died? More importantly, what would happen if she decided to reveal everything she knew as her final act? Evidence suggests that in her final years, Vanga was kept under virtual house arrest. Official biographies describe this as necessary medical care, but witness accounts paint a different picture. Visitors were screened more carefully than ever, and even her closest family members found their access limited. Her medical care was provided by doctors who were also intelligence operatives, ensuring that every aspect of her final years was monitored and controlled. Most disturbing of all are the accounts suggesting that Vanga's final predictions, the ones that might have revealed the most sensitive secrets, were never recorded at all. Several witnesses claimed that in her last months, Vanga spoke of seeing the Great Collapse and described events that would come to pass in the following decades with her characteristic accuracy. Yet no official records of these sessions exist, and the few people who claim to have heard them have been mysteriously reluctant to go on record. When Vanga died in 1996, the authorities moved quickly to secure all materials related to her life and work. Personal items, recordings, and documents were confiscated under the guise of preserving them for posterity, but researchers attempting to access these archives have found them heavily censored or missing entirely. The legacy of suppression. Today, more than 2 decades after Vanga's death, the full extent of her suppression is only beginning to come to light. Freedom of Information Act requests in various countries have revealed fragments of the surveillance operation mounted against her, but many documents remain classified. The official explanation is that they contain information that could damage national security or compromise intelligence sources and methods that are still active. But perhaps more importantly, Vanga's case represents something larger and more troubling about the relationship between power and truth. Here was someone whose gift, whatever its source, represented a fundamental threat to the carefully constructed secrets that governments depend on to maintain control. The response wasn't to understand or study this phenomenon, but to contain and ultimately destroy it. The tragedy isn't just that Vanga was silenced. It's that her silencing was so complete and systematic that we may never know what truths died with her. In a world where information is power, she possessed the ultimate information, the ability to see through deception and reveal what powerful people most want to keep hidden. The questions that remain. As we piece together the fragments of Vanga's true story, we're left with profound questions about the nature of power, truth, and the lengths governments will go to protect their secrets. Was Vanga truly psychic, or was she an incredibly gifted cold reader who understood human nature and political patterns better than anyone realized? Does it matter? What matters is that powerful people believed in her abilities enough to mount one of the most sophisticated suppression operations of the modern era. They were so terrified of what she might reveal that they were willing to sacrifice the potential benefits of her gift to ensure their secrets remained hidden. The story of Baba Vanga is ultimately the story of all of us who live under systems of power that depend on secrecy and deception. It's a reminder that truth, whatever its source, will always be seen as a threat by those who benefit from lies. And it's a warning about what we lose when we allow fear to triumph over knowledge. In the mountains of Bulgaria, where Vanga once lived, locals still speak in whispers about the woman who saw too much. They tell stories of the cars with diplomatic plates that still occasionally appear in Rupite, carrying men in expensive suits who spend hours searching through the ruins of her home. They're looking for something, perhaps recordings, perhaps documents, perhaps just traces of the truth that was so dangerous it had to be buried with the woman who saw it. But truth has a way of surviving even the most determined efforts to suppress it. Bit by bit, document by document, testimony by testimony, the real story of Baba Vanga is emerging. And with it comes a deeper understanding of how power really works in our world. Not through force alone, but through control of information and the silencing of those who see too clearly. If this story has opened your eyes to the hidden forces that shape our world, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more investigations into the truths they don't want you to know. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode, and let us know in the comments, what other suppressed truths do you think are still waiting to be uncovered? Your engagement helps us continue this vital work of bringing hidden history to light.